They didn't even try to whisper. Inside the chrome and glass fortress of Synergy Elite Gym, where the smell of expensive cologne lingered longer than sweat, the air shifted the moment Amara Lewis walked in. She didn't stumble or speak. She simply stepped onto the polished floor, clutching a beat-up duffel bag that looked like it had survived more than one storm. Her shoes, frayed at the seams, stained by work and rain, squeaked faintly as she moved past the racks of designer gymwear and titanium dumbbells. Silence rolled through the room like a warning. And then came the voice. Well, what did the scholarship program drag in this time? Standing at the center of the ring, arms folded, was Madeline Graves, the undefeated two-time world boxing champion and self-proclaimed queen of natural superiority. Her following on social media had ballooned past 2 million, most of them addicted to her quick jabs, both in the ring and online. She didn't believe in filters, not for her photos and certainly not for her opinions. Her last viral post? A photo of her flexing in the mirror with a caption that read, "When you're born elite, you don't need equity to win." Laughter trickled through the gym, not just from her. Trainers chuckled behind towels. Other fighters smirked and turned away. Phones came out, subtle but unmistakable. A new immigrant, black, wearing clearance rack gear. It was the kind of scene that fed viral clips and old prejudices. Amara didn't respond. She just checked the address on her cracked phone again, her thumb hovering over the screen like it needed permission to exist here. "You're lost," Madeline declared. "This isn't a charity. This is where real athletes train." "I'm here for the youth scholarship tryout," Amara replied softly, barely audible. Another wave of laughter. "Tryout, sweetheart, this is Synergy Elite. We don't do participation trophies. If you want a gym with free towels and pity reps, there's a YMCA 3 blocks down." A flush crept up Amara's neck. Not from shame, but from something heavier, deeper. The kind of heat you only carry when you've been told over and over that you don't belong. Coach DeMarco stepped out of his office just in time to hear the tail end of Madeline's monologue. He glanced at the paper in his hand and then at Amara. "She's on the list," he said plainly. Madeline rolled her eyes. "Seriously, you're going to let her stay?" DeMarco didn't flinch. "We train athletes, not egos." Madeline's lips curled into a smirk. "Fine," she said, stepping down from the ring. "Let's make it interesting. 3 rounds. Me and I. If she survives, she stays. If not, well, back to wherever she came from." Every phone in the room was already recording. A nobody from nowhere up against a champion with millions watching. But what no one knew, not even Coach DeMarco, was that Amara wasn't here to beg. She was here to remind the world what happens when you mistake quiet for weakness. And she hadn't come empty-handed. She had a name the streets of Kingston whispered like thunder. And today, in front of cameras and contempt, she was ready to bring the storm. Amara didn't flinch when Madeline's challenge echoed through the gym. She didn't smile, didn't speak, didn't even blink. She just nodded, once, and took the clipboard from Coach DeMarco to sign her name. It was quiet now, eerily so. The kind of silence that follows after someone throws the first match on a gasoline-soaked floor. To everyone else in the room, this was an embarrassment waiting to happen. Another viral clip to rack up views under tags like brutal knockout or gym humiliation. But to Amara Lewis, this was something else entirely. This wasn't about clout. It wasn't about going viral. It was about survival. 6 months earlier, she had landed at JFK with one suitcase, a worn passport, and a one-way dream. Her mother had sold everything, literally everything, to get her daughter out of the streets of Kingston, Jamaica. Amara was supposed to start over. Clean slate, clean city. No more fighting, no more back-alley matches for a few dollars and bruised pride. She had made a promise. No more rings, no more gloves, no more violence. Instead, she worked. 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, scrubbing marble floors in Manhattan office towers that reeked of entitlement. She cleaned bathrooms so pristine they looked untouched. She mopped up the footprints of CEOs and hedge fund managers who'd never look her in the eye. At night, She returned to a shared room in the Bronx she could barely call her own. Mattress on the floor, curtains that didn't quite reach the edges of the window, and 3 roommates who were all chasing their own versions of the American dream. But through all that, one thing kept whispering in her mind: movement. Her body remembered things her soul tried to forget: footwork, timing, pain management, rhythm. The way to absorb a punch without letting it break you. The way to throw one without needing to. That's when she found the flyer. Youth Athletic Scholarship, Synergy Elite Gym. Apply now. Printed in grayscale, half-ripped, pinned to a corkboard near the subway station. It was her only shot. A place to train legally. Clean. No blood money bets. No shady managers. No shame. But she hadn't expected her to be there. Madeline Graves wasn't just a world champion. She was a brand, an empire. The face of performance energy drinks, boxing apparel, and even a sports documentary is in the works. She weaponized privilege, wrapped in power, and sold it to millions under the label of discipline. She preached that success was earned, but only if you started from the top. And yet, for all the titles and followers, what Madeline hated most wasn't competition. It was interruption. To her, Amara wasn't a person. She was a crack in the glass. A challenge to the lie that only pedigree produces excellence. DeMarco Ruiz knew better. He'd seen this cycle before. Every 5 years, someone like Madeline rose to the top, loud, fast, photogenic. And every so often, someone like Amara would walk through his doors, quiet, underestimated, dangerous in all the right ways. That evening, as the gym emptied out and the challenge loomed, Coach Ruiz sat in his office watching Amara shadowbox alone in the far corner. No audience, no bravado, just movement, precision, control. It was like watching poetry on fast forward. But what struck him wasn't just the technique, it was the restraint. She was holding back. Every step calculated, every breath measured, as if she'd trained not just to fight, but to never be seen doing it. He made a note to check the scholarship paperwork again. Something wasn't adding up. Meanwhile, Amara sat in the locker room adjusting a pair of borrowed gloves. They didn't fit quite right. The padding was uneven. The laces had been chewed by time. But they'd do. Her hands were steady, but her mind burned. Not with fear, but memory. She remembered the first time her fists had bought her a meal. Age 8. Someone had tried to snatch her little brother's food on the street. She hadn't hesitated. 1 punch, 1 broken tooth, and 3 nights sleeping with 1 eye open. By 12, she was fighting underground matches, sometimes for money, sometimes for favors, always for respect. Her nickname had been whispered, not spoken. Tempest. Not because she was violent, but because no one ever saw her coming. She hit like a storm, fast, unrelenting, and gone before the air could settle. But America was supposed to be different. Until now. Just as she stood to leave, the door creaked open. A man stood there, dark skin, shaved head, thick accent that still carried the salt of the Caribbean. Amara Lewis. Her uncle. She hadn't seen him in almost a year. "Tempest," he said softly. Her face changed. For the first time since stepping into the gym, her eyes widened, unsure. "Uncle Malik, what are you doing here?" "I heard what's happening," he said. "I took the next flight." "I told you, I'm done with that life." "And yet here you are." She didn't reply. "You made a promise, Amara." "I did," she said, "and I kept it, until someone tried to erase my dignity in public." He sighed. "So you're going to break her jaw just to prove you belong?" "No," she said, standing tall. "I'm going to remind her that being underestimated is the most powerful weapon in the world, when you know how to use it." Coach DeMarco, listening from just outside the hallway, felt something shift inside him. This wasn't just a fight. This was legacy. And in 24 hours, the whole world would see what a legacy forged in survival really looks like. The next morning, the energy at Synergy Elite felt off. It wasn't just the usual anticipation before a sparring session. This was different, raw, tense, like the gym itself knew something seismic was coming. Word had spread fast, too fast. Madeline Graves, the reigning face of commercialized boxing, was going to spar with a scholarship girl who no one had ever heard of. Phones were out before the first warm-up. Trainers whispered. Influencers set up tripods. One guy from a local sports blog started a live stream countdown. Madeline was soaking it in. She always did. Her hands were wrapped in gold-trimmed gauze. Her hair was pulled back with precision. The camera loved her. She flexed, laughed, and played to the crowd. "This is a friendly spar," she reminded her fans. "Just giving back to the community." She winked, adding, "Hopefully she doesn't cry." Her publicist had already scheduled the TikTok clips. Her agent was prepping a branded humility lesson caption. Madeline didn't just expect to win. She expected it to be beautiful, memeable, and monetized. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner near the lockers, Coach DeMarco stared at the scholarship application on his tablet. He'd been up all night, digging. No fights recorded, no federation numbers. But something stood out. Amara's application had been submitted not online, but hand-delivered, and attached to it, a faded scan of a local news article, half-torn, barely legible. Teen girl dominates illegal street fighting ring in Kingston, dubbed Tempest by locals. It couldn't be a coincidence. He was about to walk over and ask when the gym door opened again. This time the energy shifted completely, not from fear, but recognition. A few older trainers stopped what they were doing, eyes widened. One even whispered, "No way." A man stepped in, tall and broad-shouldered, his knuckles scarred, eyes sharp. Jerome Garrison, a retired middleweight champion who now coached out of Miami, turned to Coach DeMarco. "That's Amara Lewis," he murmured. "That man trained half of Kingston's underground circuit before they cracked down. If he's here, this girl isn't just good. She's a ghost from a chapter no one wants reopened." Coach DeMarco nodded silently. He already knew. In the locker room, Amara was lacing up her shoes when she noticed something strange in the corner of her bag. A small metal object glinted under the zipper flap. Her old medal. Not just any medal. The one from her last fight. The one she swore to never touch again. She had brought it by accident. Or maybe fate had made sure it followed her here. She turned it over slowly. The back still bore the engraving. Tempest, Urban Combat Champion, Kingston 2019. She clenched it in her fist, then tucked it back into the side pocket. She didn't need it to fight, but she needed to remember who she had been. Before shame, before promises, before reinvention. That's when she heard the knock. A young assistant coach, barely 20, stood outside the locker room holding a folded document in a plastic sleeve. Miss Lewis? This is from Ms. Graves's team." Amara took it and read silently. It wasn't a contract, it was a warning. "If you choose to proceed with the sparring match and it results in any negative PR for Ms. Graves or her brand, the scholarship committee reserves the right to rescind your enrollment effective immediately. No signature, no formal stamp, just pressure. Clean, silent, effective." Amara folded it carefully and handed it back. "Tell her team I understand." The assistant blinked. "You're still going through with it?" Amara gave a half smile. Not smug, not scared, focused. "I was never here for a scholarship." 10 minutes later, both women stood in the ring. Coach DeMarco raised his hands and spoke firmly. 3 rounds, 16 Oz gloves, no headshots unless agreed. This is a spar, not a match. Respect the space." Madeline nodded theatrically, already mouthing commentary for her phone. Amara didn't nod. She didn't flinch. She just turned her eyes toward her opponent, calm, unreadable. That's when it happened. A ping, then another, then dozens. Phones buzzed throughout the gym as a new post spread like wildfire. Someone had leaked an internal email from a major sporting goods company. The subject line? Declined proposal, youth boxing scholarship for urban immigrants. Attached was a reply from Madeline's marketing team. "We don't want to associate our brand with that demographic. It dilutes the elite image we're building. The internet exploded. Tempest Rising began trending. In the crowd, you could feel it, people switching sides. Not because Amara said anything, not because she punched first, but because the air had changed. This wasn't going to be a sparring session anymore. This was a reckoning. The bell rang. It was a dull sound compared to the roar of anticipation pulsing through the gym, but it cut through everything. Silence fell again, this time not out of contempt, but out of suspense. Phones were lifted high, red lights blinking. Live streams started ticking upwards in viewers. The whole room leaned in. Madeline moved first, as expected. She came in with speed, fluid, aggressive, confident. Her left jab snapped forward, testing distance, followed by a swift feint and a right cross aimed to rattle Amara early. It was a textbook opener from a world champion. But Amara wasn't where she had been. By the time the punch sliced through the air, she had already glided an inch to the left, her hips pivoted, her weight balanced. Her footwork wasn't just trained, it was intuitive. Madeline reset quickly, smirking. "Cute," she muttered. Another flurry, 3 punches this time. Jab, jab, hook. Faster, harder, all aimed to overwhelm. Again, Amara didn't punch back. She didn't flinch. She moved like smoke, just outside the edges of impact, never panicking, never stiffening up. It was like she could read muscle tension before it turned into a strike. Spectators began shifting. Murmurs rose. One coach whispered, "She's not defending, she's dissecting." Madeline threw a harder cross, this one with weight behind it, but again, empty air. She grunted, losing rhythm for half a beat. That's when Amara stepped in, not with a punch, but with presence. She let her shoulder brush Madeline's arm as she slipped past, just enough to rattle her sense of space. Just enough to say, "I see everything you're trying to do." And suddenly the crowd wasn't smirking. Madeline's nostrils flared. She circled, adjusting her stance, now more cautious. Her smile faltered. She launched a combo, hook to the body, quick uppercut, then an overhand right meant to finish it. This time, Amara blocked one, slipped two, and answered. The left came first. Clean. Fast. A short-range check hook that clipped the edge of Madeline's jaw and turned her head just slightly. Not hard enough to drop her, but sharp enough to make her blink. Then silence again. Not a celebratory kind, the kind before thunder. Coach DeMarco stiffened. It was the first contact, but more than that, it was precise, economical. No wasted motion, just like the reports he'd read from the old Kingston fights. Madeline backed up a step, more from surprise than pain. Her eyes widened. "You hit me?" she whispered. Not to the ref, not to the crowd, to herself. And then she charged. Anger replaced calculation. Her punches grew heavier, wider. She wasn't boxing anymore. She was trying to bully. Amara let her come, let her unleash, let her gas herself out. 1 minute, then 2. Each step Madeline took forward made her shoulders rise just slightly higher, tension growing, speed diminishing. And then came the first explosion point. Madeline overreached on a right hook, putting too much weight on her front foot. Amara pivoted inside the arc, her left foot slicing diagonally like she was dancing through fire. And then, crack. A short, snapping left hook landed flush on the side of Madeline's face. Her head jolted. The room gasped. She staggered, one knee bent. She caught herself, but barely. The crowd, which had been politely quiet, erupted. Someone shouted, "Who is she?" Someone else screamed, "That's a pro punch!" The comments on the live streams flipped like dominoes. "This isn't sparring, this is art." Madeline just got touched by a ghost. Scholarship girl? Nah, that's a monster. But the one that stuck, what trended minutes later, came from a retired boxer watching remotely who typed one word, Tempest. It spread like a spark on dry leaves. Inside the ring, Madeline's face shifted from fury to panic. For the first time, her body betrayed her. Her steps slowed. Her eyes darted. She wasn't just fighting Amara now, she was fighting doubt. Amara didn't press the advantage. Not yet. She moved, recentered, eyes calm. She didn't grin. She didn't taunt. She wasn't here to humiliate. She was here to teach. And people were finally listening. Coach DeMarco folded his arms and looked at Malik, who had returned quietly to the sideline. "This girl isn't just fighting back," he said under his breath. "She's redefining the word fight." But the moment wasn't over yet. The energy shifted again, new, sharper. From the corner of the gym, one of the reporters monitoring the digital traffic stood and said, Coach, you should see this." He turned his tablet around. A leaked email had just surfaced, one tied directly to Madeline's brand. The message read, "Our brand strategy doesn't align with immigrant-based sponsorship. We're focused on elite athlete representation only." There was a pause and then a collective snap of awareness. Everyone in that gym, athletes, trainers, fans, had just realized they weren't watching a spar. They were witnessing a reckoning. The second round began without ceremony. No glove touch, no nod. Just the shrill ring of the bell and the weight of 1,000 eyes, both in the room and across the internet. The leaked email was already a wildfire. Screens flashed everywhere, showing comment sections exploding with phrases like "privilege exposed," "boxing justice," and most notably, "had Tempest unleashed." Madeline Graves came out swinging, but this time, it wasn't about dominance. It was survival. Her movements were heavier now, her stance broken by frustration. She threw looping hooks that had worked against every opponent before Amara because they had always flinched. But Amara didn't flinch. She absorbed the energy like stone absorbs weather. She didn't counter right away. She waited, let Madeline waste breath, waste power, waste posture. Then, when Madeline dropped her rear hand for just a fraction of a second, Amara struck. It wasn't flashy, just a straight right down the pipe, followed by a slip and a body shot that sounded like thunder inside the ring. The crowd groaned. You could hear air leave Madeline's lungs like a balloon deflating in shame. She stumbled, again, barely on her feet. Her trainer in the corner yelled something unintelligible, panic dressed as strategy. And then came the second explosion point. From the far side of the room, someone shouted, "Yo, she just reposted it!" Dozens of heads turned toward the gym's massive projection screen that had begun displaying a trending Twitter thread. Amara's old street name, Tempest, was now attached to a clip from a grainy underground fight in Kingston. The movement was unmistakable. The footwork, the evasions, the knockout. It wasn't folklore anymore, it was proof. And the comments? They weren't just cheering. They were declaring. This isn't a fight. This is history. You're witnessing what happens when resilience gets a second chance. This is why we film everything. Inside the ring, Madeline knew. It was over. Not just the round, not just the spar, but everything she'd built on arrogance, the image, the aura, the illusion that her success came from discipline alone, not access and comfort and protection. She realized in that moment that she wasn't fighting a scholarship girl. She was fighting someone who'd fought hunger, someone who had once fought for a loaf of bread and walked home without shoes, someone who didn't punch for applause, but out of memory. And that's when Amara stepped in, not aggressively, but deliberately. Her face unreadable. Her body is loose. She circled once, twice. Then with chilling precision, she launched a 4-punch combination so fast the cameras could barely keep up. Jab, cross, hook, uppercut. Each landed clean, each struck with surgical clarity. And just like that, Madeline crumbled. The undefeated champion dropped to her knees, then fell forward onto her gloves, gasping, blinking, trying to comprehend what had just torn through her like a hurricane. The gym went completely still. Coach DeMarco stepped forward but didn't need to count. He just looked into Madeline's glassy eyes and saw it. Defeat, not of the body, of certainty. of the false belief that success was owned rather than earned. And as medics leaned in, Amara turned away. She didn't raise her hands. She didn't smile. She walked calmly to her corner, sat down, and unwrapped her gloves like it was any other day. But the world outside was doing anything but sitting down. Because just as the gym's feed crossed 200,000 live viewers, the third explosion point went viral. Someone posted a screen recording of a private Instagram story that Madeline had recorded just before the fight. It featured her laughing, saying, "Let's be real. I'm about to give this little scholarship experiment a lesson in American greatness. Don't blink." Now the comments were firestorms. This didn't age well. American greatness got folded by Kingston Lightning. Never underestimate someone who's had to fight for their next breath. Every major sports network had picked it up. ESPN, Bleacher Report, even CNN. Headlines read, "Champion knocked out by unknown immigrant in viral fight. The rise of Tempest. From Bronx janitor to global phenomenon." When humility didn't come from victory, but from defeat. Back inside the gym, Coach DeMarco knelt next to Amara and said quietly, "You didn't just win." Amara glanced at him. "I didn't come to win." "Then why?" She looked across the ring at Madeline, still sitting, stunned, humiliated, but no longer sneering, no longer superior, just human, just small. Then she said softly, "Because sometimes people need to dig their own grave before they understand the hole they've put the rest of us in." Coach nodded slowly. "You're still Tempest, aren't you?" Amara shook her head. "No. Tempest was who I had to be. Today, I was simply me." And in that moment, the fight stopped being a match. It became a message, a televised lesson in humility, in truth, in earned respect. Because what Amara Lewis had done was not just knock out a champion. She had dismantled a myth. The clip of Madeline Graves collapsing beneath the weight of Amara Lewis's final combination reached 10 million views in under 4 hours. By morning, it was over 30 million. Every major network replayed it. ESPN called it the moment boxing got its soul back. On Twitter, the hashtag #Tempest Unleashed trended globally for 36 straight hours. But the real storm wasn't in the ring. It was in the aftermath. Within hours of the knockout, Madeline's sponsors began pulling back. First, it was a performance apparel brand that issued a one-line statement. "We stand for inclusion and respect. Our contract with Ms. Graves has been terminated." Then it was the energy drink company, followed by her management agency, which quietly removed her from their client list before issuing an apology to their followers. What destroyed her career wasn't just the loss. It was the receipts. The Instagram story where she mocked Amara. The leaked email where her team rejected immigrant-based sponsorships. The decades-old narrative of boxing as a meritocratic sport had been pierced, and the face of that illusion was suddenly jobless. Meanwhile, Amara Lewis became a household name overnight. Not through PR, not through press releases, but through truth. A young woman who had been mopping floors days before was now headlining sports channels as a symbol of justice, perseverance, and raw, undeniable talent. Viral commentary dubbed her the Quiet Storm, the anti-influencer fighter, and the future of boxing. But Amara wasn't interested in headlines. She still showed up at her cleaning job the day after the fight. Her supervisor waved her off in disbelief, saying, "Girl, you don't work here no more. The whole world saw what you did." Amara just smiled. "I still got rent due." Coach DeMarco's inbox was flooded with inquiries, interviews, documentaries, film rights. ESPN reached out requesting a special feature titled "From Undocumented to Undeniable: The Rise of Amara Lewis." Even Netflix entered the conversation. But DeMarco declined most of them. When asked why, he simply said, "The world's been watching for the wrong reasons for too long. Let's make sure they finally listen." The gym transformed almost overnight. Where once there was skepticism and entitlement, there was now reverence. The scholarship program's inbox overflowed with donation offers. Parents from underserved communities across the country asked to enroll their daughters. A billboard appeared 2 days later outside the Bronx. Earned, not given, #Tempest Unleashed. But Amara wasn't seduced by the noise. She took exactly one interview, one that mattered. It wasn't with a network. It was with a local Bronx radio station run by youth journalists. They asked her, "What did it feel like knocking out someone who tried to humiliate you in front of the world?" Amara paused, her voice steady. "I didn't do it to humiliate her. I did it so the next girl like me doesn't get laughed out of the room just for walking in." That interview went viral, too. A week later, Madeline Graves made her first public appearance. Not in a studio, not on a stage, but on a third-rate podcast trying to cling to relevancy. She sat on a folding chair in front of a gray backdrop, her hair pulled back, makeup muted. Her voice was soft, broken. "I was wrong," she said. "I didn't see her. I didn't want to. Because if I had, I would have had to confront everything I pretend to be. Amara Lewis isn't just a fighter. She's the real thing, and I mocked that because I couldn't match it." The internet didn't forgive her. The apology clip was reposted 100 different ways, usually with clown music underneath. Comments were brutal. "Too late. Keep the tears. We wanted respect, not regret." The damage wasn't just digital. It was systemic. She was dropped from the upcoming women's boxing documentary she had been narrating. Her gym revoked her honorary membership. A popular comment on Reddit summed it up best. "When the storm hits, arrogance is the first thing to drown." But Amara didn't gloat. She refused to mock Madeline, refused to clap back. When asked about the apology, she told Sports Illustrated, "I don't carry bitterness. It weighs more than gloves. I carry purpose, and that's light." She announced that she would use her earnings, not for luxury, but to launch a foundation, the Tempest Initiative, a non-profit designed to give immigrant girls access to elite sports training, mentorship, and education. At the launch ceremony, held inside a repurposed gym in Jamaica, Queens, Amara stood before a crowd of teens who had grown up on the same blocks she'd cleaned just weeks ago. She lifted the mic with both hands, the same hands that had ended a champion's career, and said, "This isn't about revenge. It's about visibility. It's about walking into a room that tells you you don't belong, and building a new room entirely." A little girl in the front row raised her hand. "Ms. Lewis, are you going to keep fighting?" Amara smiled, her voice soft. "As long as people keep underestimating girls like us, yes." The crowd erupted. But perhaps the most poetic twist came 3 months later. In a quiet gym in Miami, Madeline Graves was spotted training again. Not for a comeback, but as an assistant coach for a youth boxing program. She wore no designer gear, no makeup, just gloves and humility. When asked by a journalist if she missed being the champ, she replied, "No, I miss being honest. I'm learning how to get that back." Meanwhile, Amara Lewis, now officially known by the WBC as Tempest Lewis, signed her first professional contract, 3 fights, a 7-figure deal with global streaming rights. Her first bout sold out in less than 6 minutes. But before stepping into that arena, she posted one simple message on her Instagram: "Don't let the world define your limits, especially when they haven't survived what you have." That post alone generated over 12 million interactions, with comments ranging from "You saved my daughter's dream" to "This is what representation looks like." It wasn't just boxing fans anymore. It was educators, activists, mothers, daughters, athletes from every background. Tempest wasn't just a fighter. She was a reminder. A reminder that respect must be earned, that humility matters more than hype, that visibility isn't just about being seen, it's about being allowed to show up, and that sometimes the strongest punch isn't the one that knocks someone out. It's the one that makes everyone wake up. The cameras are gone now. The trending hashtags have faded. The headlines have moved on to the next scandal, the next sensation. But in a quiet corner of a small gym in Kingston, Jamaica, the story still echoes. In the fists of girls who train barefoot, in the determination of young women learning how to move, not just through punches, but through the weight of being unseen. Amara Lewis, once called Tempest, now simply known as Amara, stands beside a wall where she's hung a single photo. It's not her victory, not of the knockout. It's a snapshot of her walking into Synergy Elite Gym, shoulders square, eyes uncertain, her duffel bag frayed at the edges. Because that moment, not the one where she dropped a champion to her knees, is the moment everything began. She never wanted revenge. What she wanted, what she fought for, was recognition without condition, to walk into a space without being laughed at, to enter a ring without being seen as a novelty or a charity case, to be measured not by her shoes or skin or passport, but by her skill, her discipline, her story. And that's why her story resonates. It's not just about boxing. It's about the fight before the fight, the invisible one, the one waged in resumes that get tossed aside because of a name. The one faced by girls is that they're too much, or not enough, before they even speak. The one that plays out in boardrooms, classrooms, and locker rooms, where the burden isn't just proving your worth, it's surviving long enough to get the chance. Amara didn't win because she hit harder. She won because she refused to let someone else define her ceiling. She once said, "Bitterness is heavier than gloves." And maybe that's what we need to remember. Not every victory looks like a knockout. Sometimes the most radical act of power is choosing not to be angry, even when you have every right to be. Because it's easy to fight with fists, but it takes something deeper to fight with grace. When she launched the Tempest Initiative, Amara didn't name it after herself. She named it after what she had to become to survive. And then, she let it go. Because dignity doesn't scream, it stands. Today, there are over 300 girls training in her program across 3 countries. Not because they want to be famous, but because they want to be seen. And every time one of them laces up her gloves, she carries a piece of Amara's story. Not the viral clip, the truth behind it. The truth that you can start in a place where people expect nothing of you and still rise. That the ones who laugh at your arrival might one day watch you walk out of the ring with their entire world in your hands. That legacy is not about how many people know your name. It's about how many people stop hiding theirs because of what you did. So if you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been told you're not qualified, not polished, not enough, remember this. Sometimes the greatest weapon isn't rage or force. Sometimes it's calm. Sometimes it's knowing who you are long before the world decides to catch up. And sometimes the storm doesn't come to destroy. It comes to clear the air,